Welcome to Happy Times and Places, a Doctor Who episode commentary podcast in which I, Toby Hadoke, try to accentuate the positive from a story chosen by a friend of mine. They choose their favourite things about it, and I have to guess what they are. Well, hello, folks. I've had a schedule for this all planned, and I've completely broken with protocol. It wasn't long ago you had Dragonfire, and I have to eke the McCoys out because there aren't so many, and actually they were snapped up fairly quickly in terms of people wanting to do them. However, circumstance has forced me, I think, for reasons you will understand, to release this one ahead of when I'd originally planned. So let's first meet our special guest for this particular adventure.
Hello, Toby, and hello, faithful viewers and listeners of Toby's Happy Times and Places. It's an utter pleasure to be a guest on here. I am Anthony Townsend, and what do? I do all sorts of things. I do a bit of acting. I do a bit of voice work. I do a bit of singing sometimes, some hosting, interviewing, amongst other things. So I can be found here and there doing this and that, mostly. And today I'm here about something that's definitely feels like a happy time and place for me, Time in the Rani.
Now, Anthony recorded this some time ago because when I started this podcast, I got in touch with loads of people, and some were quicker than others in getting back to me, and Anthony was one of the first. But as I say, I've sort of spaced out adventures based on, getting a variety of stuff out there. Since Anthony recorded that, Anthony has been in hospital and has had quite a serious diagnosis. And if you don't know Anthony, and I don't know Anthony that well, in fact I don't know a lot of people who I call friends of mine who do this podcast. I've never really been an active part of fandom except for when I started doing the shows and things like that, and I met all these people whose names I'd read. Anthony wrote for various magazines and stuff, so I was aware of Anthony, who I think bought me a gin and tonic after a show. That might have been my first experience of them, but I'm not sure. And that was before I think I realised and put two and two together and went, oh, it's that Anthony. But Anthony has had a very serious diagnosis, and as well as doing all the Doctor Who stuff, they have committed their working life to the charitable sector, and have had various ups and downs, but has always been a jolly and cheerful and upbeat example to everybody. But actually needs and has not requested this, but a group of sort of friends have sort of got together and set up a GoFundMe page because I don't think anybody had quite seen what was going to happen, and that Anthony would need some help because, as I say, a very serious health diagnosis that is ongoing, and so I brought it forward in the schedule, one, to celebrate Anthony, so that's as maudlin as I'm going to get, because Anthony is good fun and lots of positive energy, and you've got to have a sense of humour to choose Time in the Rani. That's the other thing. So yes, on with the motley, and there's a lot of motley in this, because I have a confession to make before we start. Oh, and I've just taken the cellophane off my season 24 box set. So I've only recently released Dragonfire, but that I had to watch on DVD because I was doing it before the release. So this is the first time I have seen any McCoy on Blu-ray. However, if you had asked me in a private moment, because I try and be positive and spread the love about Doctor Who, but we all have our likes and our loathings, to choose my least favourite Doctor Who story of all time, it's this one. So, with due deference to Anthony, who I like very much and who I'm sending lots of love and best wishes, I'm also cursing Anthony for choosing time. Well, but I think this might be a lesson to me, because Anthony is somebody who has an infectious sense of joie de vivre and fun, and I think I see a lot of commentary on Doctor Who on Twitter and social media being so earnest and and sometimes very finger waggy, that it sort of sucks the joy out of the show. And actually, Doctor Who is nothing without its joy. So I might have had some sort of Damascene conversion by the end of this. Let's see. And this is probably the story I have seen the least recently. Even when it came out on DVD, I didn't watch it. I remember, I think I did a couple of episodes with commentary, and life got in the way. So I have not seen this and Paradise Towers for different reasons, but I'll go into that when I do Paradise Towers, which at the time I adored, and yet still haven't watched for quite a long time. Interesting this, because I remember this coming out. And anyway, let's talk about it when it's on. So, with much love to Anthony, who has a GoFundMe page that I will be plugging on every episode, and I make no apologies for that. And, if everybody just gives a little amount, that can accumulate into a large amount that will be very useful to somebody who's very poorly and could just do with a bit of a lift, and who is given to the Doctor Who world. And it would be nice if the Doctor Who world could give back. So, without further ado, let me embark on what currently stands as my least favourite Doctor Who story and see how I cope. It's time of the Rani. I'm going to press play now. This was, magical. This was the height of special effects at the time. I remember thinking this was amazing, and my school friends even grudgingly sort of acknowledged that this was that it's a pretty good opening. And I do like the sky of Lancashire and the Lancashire makeup. This was all pretty good so far, so good. Quite an exciting opening. Doctor in a Quarry, don't mind that. Bonnie Langford, poor Bonnie Langford, we'll talk about, I'm sure. Knowing Anthony, that might be their favourite choice. That is quite a thing, isn't it? Leave the girl, it's better. And optical illusions, when this happened, it looked to me like Colin Baker's face. I thought it had got his chin and everything. No, we know it's Sylvester McCoy in a wig, but I thought they'd done more than just done a video effect. I thought they'd constructed a false Colin Baker. That's because, you watch it. I didn't. I watched it over and over again. This is the first episode I videotaped live off air with a Yashima E180. Videotapes are expensive. I got Yashimas because a friend had a cash and carry ticket. He said, they do videotapes, they're dead cheap, but it's because Yashima videos were really bad. So actually I had them on off-air quality, which in the days of pirate videos was wow, I've got off-air video, but not very good quality. And I had the dilemma of going, so I put this and Delta on. No, I think, did I put this and Dragonfire and Paradise and Delta, so I'd at least have some in chronological order. But it hurt that it went 4-4-3-3 because you could only get 7 on a tape. I wish they'd gone 4-3-4-3, which they later did. I like to think in a boon for the home recording market. Einstein. There was a rumour for ages in the pre-internet days that Patrick Troughton was Einstein because Patrick Troughton was quite small. Actually, I say in the pre-internet age, you get stupid rumours like that. They still got the thing about Tony Robinson being the caveman in Adventure in Space and Time because he sounds a bit like him. So the internet's even worse for it. So has the Rani got a nose piercing? Of course, we know it's Einstein. They don't because they're green aliens. I thought San looked a bit like my brother's girlfriend at the time, who was very sort of elfin, pretty person. Yes. Am I saying I fancy San? Am I saying I fancy San and I quite fancied my brother's girlfriend? I don't know. Let's move on to different thought. Kate O'Mara gives it all she's got, doesn't she? But it's I had no idea at the time it was so of its time, but because I was quite impressed because Kate O'Mara had been in Dynasty and somebody doing something in America and being in Doctor Who, because now British actors cross over to the States all the time, but there tend to be the British actors in the States then moved to the States and worked in the States, like the mighty David Warner and Simon McCorkindale and people like that. I always quite like it when they do bit of the Doctor Who theme in the music. Kev McCulloch's music gets a lot of stick, but there's a moment in the score of this episode that I think is absolutely magnificent. And as I say, I might be clutching for straw. I mean, that Kate O'Mara, it looks like she's been made out of distillation of 80s juice. No, this is Sylvester McCoy's debut scene. Does he look good in Colin Baker's costume? I don't know. Points. Who am I? And who are you? I hate the way he does that. I'm so sorry. In fact, I hate that as well. This is why I've got to be positive, but as Doctor's debuts go, that I don't think is great. And I think it's because Doctor Who's now getting to the point where it's, 3 cameras on a studio set with a glammed up dominatrix actress in with big hair, and it's just. So I think where, and I can understand why people like it when it gets a bit campy and vampy, and I'm all for that. I said, no, but you see, but he looks so like Doctor Who, and I think he's great, and I think he's brilliant casting. I think that opening where he does the sort of comical look and double take and the terrible tumble that you can't edit with multi-camera, you wouldn't do it like that nowadays, is set my teeth on edge when I was a youngster, and I had to go into school, and just, oh God, and Patty Caldwell, I bet the open air is on this where she, and I was worried about Doctor Who because the whole world seemed against it, and I wanted it to be gritty and violent. I wanted it to be like Resurrection of the Daleks and Earthshock, which actually were the stories that led to the cancellation of Doctor Who, of course, and actually have their own problems. I love this piece of music. In fact, I think this sequence is great because you've got Urek's feet. I think it's quite fun with the eyes. You don't see the Tetrap, and that's a cracking piece of music. Although that's the third time Sylvester McCoy has fallen over. He moves like an Iridian. The Iridians in The Chase, those guys who sort of crouch. When he's standing outside the TARDIS there, he looks like an Iridian. You heard it here first. The Lacertians. Lacertia is the twin planet of Iridius. I really like the long hair. They've tried to do something genuinely alien, I think, with the design of the Lacertians. And I know it's people with green makeup and stuff stuck on, and they've got a hat to cover their hair and all that sort of thing. But I think the Lacertian design is good. And I'm sorry in accentuating, but I had to give you my baseline of where I was and what it was I had against this story. And I think because the McCoy era, see, even the people who made it, Andrew Cartmel, I know that actually the camera lens on that is great. I like what that shot does with the quarry stuff behind. She called Sarn. It's named after the Planet of Fire. But I think it's important for me to establish why I say we're talking about what was my least favourite Doctor Who story. I think Nick Pegg knew Karen Clegg as Sarn. And this was state of the art. And these bubble traps are a great effect. And it's really nifty how it bounces off the rocks and they have the explosion because, oh dear, she doesn't bounce off. But the bubble traps are great. So there's lots in this that's good. And Mark Greenstreet, I worked with. Mark Greenstreet was going to be a star. He was in a thing called Brat Farrar, where he played twins, one of whom was good and one of whom was bad. And I think it had Frederick Treves in it too. And Prunella Scales, maybe? No. Hannah Gordon? I know they got credited above him, and I thought it was unfair of him because he was the star, but it's when you get senior performers got higher billing in those days, which I like. And of course, Doctor Who magazine, when it announced the cast of this, it talked of veteran actor Donald Pickering, who had been in The Pallisers, which was clearly John Nathan Turner's favourite programme, because I'd never heard of it. I don't think my mum remembered it, but no, this is a good attempt to have a needle going in, but it's clearly going back into the gun and not into the arm. But yeah, Mark Greenstreet, and he was in he was a bit of a heartthrob, and he was in Trainer, which was going to be which was about horse racing. It was done by some of the team behind some good TV dramas like Howard's Way and popular TV dramas like Howard's Way, and good TV dramas like Secret Army and Cold Hits. Gerald Glaister was across all of those, and Trainer was a failure, and it seemed to sink dear old Mark. I worked with him on a production of The Taming of the Shrew a few years later, when he was still enough of a name to be, you know, to be a reason to be going there, and he had one of the lead parts. But then he went into directing. He directed a couple of films, but he was a handsome boy and he was a decent actor. I hope he's happy. I did talk to him about Doctor Who, but the one thing he told me I don't think reflects well on anybody, so I'm not going to repeat it. It's not scandalous. It's just, I think it's just of its time. Now, of course, how can you not love, as a 47-year-old man who doesn't need to care anymore because this is ancient and has no impact on Doctor Who or its reputation, Kate O'Mara doing an impression of Bonnie Langford, which, I mean, if you're trying to salvage the reputation of a show that was famous for sending people behind the sofa and was getting accusations of being pantomimic, I don't think getting Kate O'Mara to do an impression of Bonnie Langford is a good idea. However, divorced of that context, I think it's adorable. I think Kate O'Mara, actually, yes, she is very 80s and she's got the boots and the big hair and she's giving a certain kind of performance, but she's one of those absolutely solid pros, as in professionals, who could turn her hand to whatever she's asked to do. And yeah, she's the sort of glamour puss space dominatrix. I mean, bless her, even at the 50th anniversary where I interviewed her on stage, where she was a bit deaf and she'd had a stroke, she was still dressed as a space lesbian, which I loved her for. Glamorous to the end, bless her. But she's brilliant as Bonnie Langford. And I think this is really funny. And actually, because Sylvester McCoy, I still think, is finding his voice and his level of performance, and is prone to doing sort of daft things, that kind of fits, because she's got that kind of oh Christ thing going on, which sort of works because it helps ease him in and sort of temper some of his excesses. And it's a nice contrast, and it's the character of the Rani, being tired of the Doctor. It works on every level, apart from at the time when it terrified me and I thought it was the end of Doctor Who. This is done in post production of the sound there, but that's because they're quite far away, but it makes for a good shot, doesn't it? Poor Bonnie Langford. I mean, her being in Doctor Who was another sign that, it's the end and this is terrible. And she got so much stick, and we only discovered later that she was actually quite unhappy and quite at sea doing this. And yet she's proved what a national treasure she is. Terrific actress in EastEnders. She's absolutely delightful person. And weren't we all wrong and mean? And it's only as I've sort of got older, and because now one's mean thoughts, people put them on the internet, and you see them directed at people rather unfairly. And unfortunately, now what happens is that if you think somebody's spelt the end of Doctor Who, you can tell them directly, and it's not very nice. I mean, I don't. I try and be. I try and be nice on the internet, but people do, and people don't realise a lot of the time that what they're doing. The person receiving it is a human being who's not living in an ivory tower and sitting on a wodge of cash and has an easy life. They're somebody that's prone to all sorts of insecurities and and feels the criticism very, very harshly. No, we didn't do that, but I certainly felt very cross at the idea of Bonnie Langford in Doctor Who, largely based on her reputation as Violet Elizabeth Bott in Wurzel Gummidge. And I remember a Sunday paper had the headline "Virgin Bonnie vows never to strip," and she was rather paraded about the press as this sort of oddball goody two-shoes who, she can sing and she can dance, so we hate her, because this idea that you work hard and you hone skills that actually a lot of people don't have is somehow un-British, and that you should just turn up and phone it in, whereas actually, as time has gone on, the actors that prosper these days are, you have to work very hard, keep yourself fit. The more skills that you have, the better. And the idea that it was just all a bit of a lark, a natural talent shone through, meant that anybody who so obviously, took it very seriously and put in a lot of hard work was somehow deemed worthy of cocking a snook to. What a bizarre attitude we have. And I think, yes, her performance is, again, slightly of the time and slightly theatrical compared to what you get on television now. But actually, with time being what it is, loads of performances in Doctor Who are more theatrical than we would do now, because it's three-wall television with a multi-camera. And I don't think that Bonnie Langford sticks out especially. Some of her moves occasionally, but I think she's fine actually, and she's actually very good at some of it. And she has a gusto, and she's always on it. And I'm glad that I'm no longer that angry young man. This is my favourite bad thing of Doctor Who, which is a concrete tunnel that obviously looks like a concrete tunnel, and they've gone, we need to make this tunnel look like it's from space. How do we make it look like it's from space? Put some, the bit where the two concrete bits stick together and there's a bit of slight gap, a slight groove? Stick some tinsel in the groove and then it will come a space tunnel. Okay. Well done for swinging your feet, Kate O'Mara. So it's a peculiar mixture, but I have to say, part of it, because I haven't seen this for ages, I could easily lose myself in this and just watch it for fun. And that's surely what Doctor Who is. But then it comes to the thing of going, because I always mistrusted people who watch Doctor Who for fun. Isn't that awful? But I think the people that would watch it because they enjoyed the bad bits, I always thought, no, you've got to treat it with reverence because it's Doctor Who, it's important. And again, I think from viewing people on Twitter now who when people do a joke, and I'm not talking about a rude or a racist or an unpleasant joke, there's lots of those on Twitter, but when people approach things, there is a distinct lack of humour from certain quarters on Twitter, and it makes you think, oh, come on, it's supposed to be fun. And part of what separates Doctor Who from a lot of drama is its sense of humour. And that's a clever, nice little touch, the liquid that changes colour. And I think Doctor Who should be funny when it tries to be funny, but I know there are certain fans that enjoy the badness of Doctor Who, and I'm not sure I can ever be one of those, because even though I'm a comedian, I don't have a sense of humour. His face is brilliant, isn't it? So I haven't quite got to grips with, watching Doctor Who and laughing at it. I don't think I ever want to do that, but I think I can. I definitely think I've loosened up a bit, and again, because what this is like does now not impact on the long-term future of Doctor Who. and there's no point having regrets for what happened to Doctor Who, because what happened to Doctor Who happened, and actually history meant that it had that glorious revival. So I spent too much of my life being cross about things and angry about things, and I'm trying to learn that life's too short to be angry about things I can't do anything about, and that's funny. And I think the shooting of the Tetraps when you can't see their faces is great, and there is a sort of bat-like thing. I like the shot of the wing there. Look at that space tinsel. I think that's glorious. What does the tinsel do? It's because it's from space. Look. Oh, and I haven't talked yet about, because looking at poor old San's little skeleton there. I like the way the Lacurtians run with their arms backwards. It's just a way of going. It's not quite. I haven't quite drafted in Rosalind to Winter to do some insect movement, but it's a way of going. Well, these have a slightly different physicality to us. The less I like me, yeah, and he's. I like his mournful face. He's got such a good face. He's got such a good face for Doctor Who, because it is the face of a clown with a melancholy sort of backdrop. He's like a sort of quizzical sad bird. He's given it all, isn't he, old Mark Gridley? Now, I'm going to look out for something here, because somebody put something online. There's a bit of this that is blocked out by a video effect, because it's a flapping costume. They're really going for the humour of this, and I remember being quite cross about this and thinking, well, this this is just too silly, and they wouldn't have done it like this in the older days. And then I got Robot on video. There's actually a black square in that, on that pile of clothes that's I think masking something that's flapping in a distracting way that I hadn't seen. Oh yeah, because you can see it's not there now, and there's a sort of a checked thing hanging down. The various little sound effects, the broken glass and the school bell and all of that sort of thing, they are sort of going, we don't quite trust this scene to be funny, so we will augment it with funny noises, which I always think is the worst thing to do. I'm never a great fan of binkety bonkety, aren't we funny music, especially when you've got, funny performers. But I have to say... Kato Mara is a flipping legend, but I have to say, I'd have gone, oh, I could do with this being a bit more serious, and then of course I got Robot on video and went, okay, they did it stupidly then, so I can hardly complain. But again, it was in the old days it was better. Cretin. I love the way she does that. It's a good location too. I know it's the sort of Doctor Who quarry, but I like the way it's shot. It's a funny sort of composite, is it? Yeah, interesting. Haven't really talked about poor old Colin Baker's regeneration. He was treated very shoddily, and I liked Colin Baker, so I think, again, part of my antipathy towards this was that this was what had been done as a result of the unfair sacking of a doctor that I liked, and who before this I'd met and interviewed and liked, so felt loyalty towards. So I was going to be cross with this. Why does the doctor go, but why is the Rani dressed as you, Mel? It's a funny old costume as well, isn't it? She's done well to keep her trousers white, though. And that's great. I love the explosion, too. And this is a splendid sequence. And the bubble traps are a brilliant idea. And I think they hold up pretty well. And yeah, the bouncing off the rocks is a brilliant idea. Yeah. Oh no, what's going to happen? Brilliant. That's great. So, is this going to be how I learned to stop worrying and love Time and the Rani? I mean, yes, it is quite theatrical. Jeff Powell was a hugely respected designer, and apparently a genius who would just sort of scribble stuff on a fag packet and make magic out of nothing. But it does look a bit that, the Rani's place does look a bit, overlit BBC studio with a sort of. Joanna Newbury, assistant floor manager, is related to Gary Newbury. Barry Newbury, the designer. Ian Dow, I interviewed. Oh, bless him. He's no longer with us. Alec Wheel, gone. See, I think of these as modern Doctor Who people, but loads of them are dead. God, Ken True, yeah, he's gone. Oh, dear. Oliver Elms. Now, a friend of mine at school knew a guy called Donovan Elms, who was Oliver Elms' son. But I never managed to meet either of them. And I also don't like that logo. But hang on. This is supposed to be the stuff I like. But again, I think I'm just giving context to what my reaction to this was. And I do think that logo is an absolute aberration. It looks like something's trying to be zany and modern. And it really, let's not, I can't even describe how awful I think it is. It's this Doctor Who is a traveller of mystery and who's travels through the ages. I'm supposed to be being positive, so the logo is not going to be my favourite thing. But there was plenty in that. As I say, I almost wished I'd just been able to sit that back and watch that for fun. It's amazing how much of the dialogue and the little bits of acting from people, like the bit where Mark Greenstreet sort of pulls the face when Mel gets caught in the bubble trap and tries to grab her when she leaves the space tunnel. All of those tiny little bits, because I watched these over. Yeah, I hated it so much. I watched these over and over again. I mean, every day when I got back from school, because, it was new Doctor Who and I'd videoed it. But I was a teenager and I was cross about things. So I watched it, but was so cross about it. And I suppose I can't regret what I did when I was young, but I'm glad I'm teaching myself not to waste my time being furious on things I can't do anything about. And it's all part of the great world of Doctor Who. And there's so much in there to enjoy. So what's going to be my favourite thing? Well, I've also got to guess what Anthony's favourite thing is going to be. So I could choose the bubble traps because I think they're exceptional. I think they're a really good special effect. I could choose that dum da 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 dum that piece of music where Doctor goes, "I'll smash it to pieces," which I also think he does brilliantly. And the shot of the Tetrarch coming in and but because it's Anthony and because it's also great, I'm going to choose Kate O'Mara is Bonnie Langford as my favourite thing for episode 1.
So now Toby's watched episode 1, and well, what can I say about episode 1? There's so much to say about episode 1 that's so fantastic and exciting. It's got a whole fresh start, new things, new Doctor, of course, new title sequence, new music, new script editor, new. And it's got a pre-title sequence. Oh, that's exciting. I don't know if I've ever had one of those before. So that seemed very, very fun. I'd been wondering beforehand how they were going to cover the fact that Mr. Baker wasn't unfortunately there anymore. No, wrong way. I can't get used to what this recording thing is doing. And what else have I got here? Embarking on a new adventure. Oh, the script is so quotable. That is very, very good of Pip and Jane. They generally are, for whatever reason, very quotable amongst your friends, if you've got friends like I've got. And that leads me to the thing that I love the most about this episode, is one particular line that does get used amongst my friends rather a lot. Just goes to show what sort of bunch we are. And it's so good. There's even a badge available of it, and here it is. Can you read that? Whoop. Leave the girl, it's the man I want. Now, if that isn't top for performance and for script, I don't know what is. So that is my first top thing from episode 1 out of so many.
Oh, didn't I say? And it is quite a moment. Right, okay, that's the negatives out of the way. I needed to say the things I didn't like in order to give you some context. But Anthony, infectiously joyous person that Anthony is enthusing me about Time in the Rani. So it's with a hop and a skip and a trip into a bubble trap that I'm going to bounce spinning into episode 2. That'll be next time, when the Kershaw will definitely be one of my, and your, I hope, happy times and places.
I think you'll find. I think you'll find. I think you'll find. I think you'll find.
Bonnie Langford wasn't in Wurzel Gummidge, she was in Just William. I know that, you know that, everyone knows that. Why didn't I say that? My brain wasn't working properly. I'd just been watching Time in the Rani. Do me a favour, its insides were scrambled. But hopefully this will stop anyone writing in. Thank you so much for listening to Happy Times and Places, which is presented by me, Toby Hadoke, and my special guest this time around is Anthony Townsend, on Twitter at Antoine Fruit. Antoine, Antoine, Fruit, as in fruit. Please do follow, and there is a GoFundMe fundraiser, a small hand for Anthony without an H and with an I, Antoni. I'll do a link in my blurb, and I'll tweet that on @Hadoke Podcasts as well. But let's see if we can help to make Anthony comfortable at this difficult time. The music for this podcast is by Dave Gates, and the podcast artwork by Dylan Patterson. I'd like to include the patrons of Toby Hadoke's Time Travels, who include Ruben Herfindahl, Peter Harness, Rob Leonard, Stephen Moffat, Richard Straw, Paul Carrington, Paul Cook, Peter Crocker, Rob Dawson, John Deere, Chris Dunford-Kelk, Chris Phone, Jason Gorman, Siobhan Galichon, Ian Key, Joe Llewellyn, Darren Mackay, and Barry Platt. You too can become a patron at www.patreon.com/Toby Hadoke. Tiers start from as little as £3 a month, although if you go annually, you get 10% off that as well, and that means you get releases well in advance of the Great Unwashed. You also get exclusive material, and there's also a chance in the higher tiers to get things like a badge. And there are monthly AMAs open to everybody as well. It's a largely egalitarian thing, but the odd badge-shaped carrot for the higher tiers. But there's plenty there. Some would say too much at the £3 tier. If you don't want to commit to a month or whatever, you can do a one-off payment if you like at kofi.com/Toby Hadoke. But what costs you nothing, and what I could really do with at the moment, is 5-star reviews at iTunes and Apple and anywhere that you get your podcast from, and perhaps a few nice words as well, along with the 5-star rating. So yeah, the 5-star is the rating, and the reviews are you saying, oh, it's lovely and the best thing ever in the world. That just, that sort of low-key endorsement. But that would really help with my algorithms, and they're looking a bit rusty at the moment. So apply a bit of shine to my dull and rusty algorithms, and I'd be very, very grateful. Thanks.